Desperation. A curious thing, isn't it? It has this way of clutching at us, making us scramble, search, and beg for answers where none seem forthcoming. And in the dance of relationships, nothing stirs that desperation, quite like watching an avoidant pull away. But what if I told you the secret to stopping it wasn't to chase them, wasn't to plead or cling, but rather to step back, and oddly enough, to let go? Ah, but you see, letting go is not the surrender it appears to be. No, it's a tactic as deliberate as a master chess move. To understand why this works, why it's the only thing that works, we must first unravel the tangled web of avoidance itself, a labyrinth built from childhood wounds and reinforced by years of guarded self-preservation. So let us explore this, shall we? Together we'll uncover why the avoidant pulls away, why your instinctual reactions only push them further, and most importantly, how to shift the dynamic entirely. And along the way, I'll share a tale or two, as I do. Picture the avoidant as a moth, fluttering near a flame. The flame is connection, intimacy, warmth, closeness. They long for it, drawn by the glow, but every time they approach, they're overwhelmed by the heat, the risk of being burned. So they pull back, retreat to the cool safety of distance. Yet, even in their retreat, they cannot fully resist the light. This paradox, wanting connection yet fearing its demands, defines the avoidant. It's a conflict born of attachment schemas, mental frameworks crafted by early experiences. Perhaps their caregivers were distant, unreliable, or overly demanding. Whatever the cause, they learn to associate closeness with danger. And so, as adults, they approach relationships with one hand extended and the other firmly shielding their heart. And then, of course, there's you, the partner, the one who sees the good in them, who wants to bridge the distance, who believes that if you can just love them enough, they'll finally stay. But as you draw closer, they pull away, and the cycle begins. Their withdrawal, your pursuit, their retreat becoming more pronounced the harder you try. But here's the rub. The more you chase, the more you confirm their belief that intimacy is overwhelming, that people can't be trusted to handle their boundaries. You become, in their eyes, exactly what they feared, and the relationship collapses under the weight of its own unmet expectations. Now, you've heard the advice before, haven't you? Mirror their behavior. When they pull back, you pull back too. It's good advice as far as it goes. It neutralizes the chasing dynamic, gives the avoidant space to breathe, and prevents you from exhausting yourself in a futile pursuit. But it's not enough. Alone, mirroring achieves little more than a stalemate. They drift further, and you're left waiting, frozen in mutual detachment. The key, then, is the second step. The twist. Not just mirroring their behavior, but shifting the dynamic entirely. Let me tell you about Miranda. Ah, Miranda. Young, hopeful, full of life. She met Bob, an avoidant through and through. For the first 6 months, their romance was a dream. Late-night talks, shared laughter, whispered promises. But then, as avoidants do, Bob began to pull away. The text became sporadic, the calls less frequent. Miranda, panicked, turned to the usual advice. She mirrored his distance, stopped initiating contact, and waited, and waited, and waited. Bob, sensing no change, drifted further, and just as Miranda thought her restraint would draw him back, he delivered the dreaded words, "I don't think this is working out." So what went wrong? Miranda mirrored his behavior, yes, but she made a crucial error. She stopped there. She waited motionless, giving Bob exactly what he needed to walk away guilt-free. Her silence confirmed his schema, that people grow anxious and clingy, even when they're saying nothing at all. Now let's rewind. Same story, but this time, Miranda adds the twist. She mirrors Bob's distance, yes, but instead of waiting, she begins to rebuild her life. She reconnects with friends, picks up old hobbies, throws herself into new experiences. Her days are filled, not with longing for Bob, but with living for herself. And Bob notices. Suddenly, the control he thought he had begins to slip. Miranda isn't chasing him, isn't waiting. She's moving on, and for the first time, Bob feels the pull. The dynamic shifts. He begins to wonder, have I lost her? Why does this work? Let's dive into the psychology of it. Avoidants operate on a schema that says, closeness is dangerous. People will overwhelm me if I let them. Your independence challenges that schema. It shows them something unexpected. You don't need them. You're not chasing. You're not fitting the anxious mold they've come to expect. And then there's the paradox of desire. Human beings, avoidance included, are wired to value what they fear losing. When Miranda stopped waiting, Bob's fear of intimacy was replaced by a fear of abandonment. The flame flickered out, and the moth, no longer overwhelmed by its heat, began to seek it once more. Of course, this advice is easier said than done. Letting go isn't just about actions. It's an emotional process. It means accepting the possibility that they might not come back. It means focusing on yourself not as a tactic, but as a genuine shift in priorities. And here's the catch. This works best when you mean it. When you let go not to bring them back, but because you've decided your own well-being matters more than the relationship. Even as you detach, the avoidant wrestles with their own inner chaos. They crave connection, yet fear its demands. They want the warmth of closeness, but panic at its cost. And when you pull away, you trigger their greatest fear, being truly alone. But not every avoidant will face that fear. Some will retreat further, their defenses too entrenched. And this is the harsh truth. You cannot save them from themselves. All you can do is create the space for them to choose, and in the meantime, save yourself. In the end, letting go isn't about winning them back. It's about reclaiming your own life. It's about stepping out of the cycle of pursuit and retreat and finding a peace that isn't dependent on their actions. And the irony? It's often in that peace, when you've truly let go, that they feel the pull to return. Not because you chased them, but because you stopped. So, my dear friends, the only way to stop an avoidant from pulling away forever is to let them go. Not as a strategy, not as a ploy, but as a gift to them, yes, but more importantly to yourself.